Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this learning series about how to learn Figma as a product person. My name is Katie Chambers, and I'm our FigJam advocate here, and I am delighted to be joined by Lauren, who's going to be teaching us all about how to use Figma from the very basics all the way to building something that we can share with our stakeholders. Lauren, thanks for being here.
You bet. I'm very excited.
And I'd love to get us started just by learning a little bit about you. Can you introduce yourself to the group, Lauren? Tell us about your design background and what brings you here today.
Yeah, definitely. So I am a designer advocate at Figma, which means a lot of my role is just helping people to learn Figma, which is always really fun. Before I came to Figma, I was a senior product designer. I worked at Grubhub, and I think for about 5 years, I was a product designer. So I've been in the weeds of doing product design and am just really excited to help people learn all about everything in Figma now.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. I've already learned so much in working with you on the team, and I know we're going to learn a ton more through this series. So I really appreciate you taking the time to teach us. Thanks
You
so
bet.
much, Lauren. And just to quickly cover what we're going to be going over in this series, we are talking about coming from a product builder perspective of someone who is using Figma with their team, maybe providing feedback, adding comments to files, but never creating those files yourself just because you don't feel like you have the confidence. And yet I often have this need where I feel like if I could just visually communicate my ideas, if I could just do a little bit of designing in Figma, my communications would be so much more effective. So I thought, I have all these great designers on my team. Let's learn how to do that. Let's break that down so it feels less intimidating and learn how to use Figma in order to get that buy-in, in order to create those more visual communications. So we're going to be coming at this from a flow of, I have this idea that I want to try to communicate with my team, and I want to try to learn how to use Figma in order to do that. So we have a workflow that we'll be jamming on together. We are assuming that I've already used Figma before. So I've gone into Figma files to do things like commenting and provide feedback to our designers, but haven't yet used it myself. And also that there are some assets that we'll be using that our designers have already created. And Lauren will teach us all about not only what those are, but also how to talk about them so your designers aren't rolling their eyes at you as you're trying to talk about them about Figma. Does that sound feasible, Lauren? Does it seem like we can accomplish this in a few weeks?
Yes, absolutely. We're gonna do it, and it's gonna be so much fun. I'm excited.
I can guarantee that. Any meeting I have with Lauren is fun. So at the very least, we will have fun. We will have lots of laughs, lots of questions answered. And so our learning objective is that by the end of this series, this first installment of the series, we want to be able to have someone like myself who is not versed in Figma at all to be able to create something like wireframes, light prototypes using Figma well enough that we can communicate these ideas with our stakeholders and get that buy-in that's so important for success in our roles. And so, Lauren, is it okay if we dig into the journey of how we'll get there before we start our first chapter?
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. Okay, let's go into our learning plan. So we are here day one, just getting kicked off with introductions. We got to know a little bit about Lauren. We'll learn lots more about Lauren, hopefully over the series, and also what we are trying to learn here. And then from there, Lauren, what's the first step of creating Figma? Where do we go from here?
Yes, so we are going to start just at the basics of the UI of Figma and file organization of how do you even create a file? How do you organize your files? Because I feel like especially if you are not super familiar with using Figma and it's one of your first couple of times in there, your sidebar is going to be very blank. So let's figure out how to find our files and how to make sure that we can easily access those.
Love that. And then from there, once we know how to do that, we will create that file and figure out how to then start structuring that file. It can be a little scary to come into that blank file. And if you're the one creating it, no, what do I do from here? Mm-hmm. And then we'll dig into some of those concepts that I hear all the time and I pretend to know what they mean. And I kind of have some idea, but Lauren, what are some of those concepts that we're going to learn about that are so important to your experience in Figma?
Yeah, so starting with just structuring your file, talking about pages and frames and sections and groups and rectangles, all about like the hierarchy there, when to use what, how to use which ones, how to create those, then getting into libraries. So your team likely will have probably created libraries, which will make it really easy for you that you don't have to create everything from scratch in Figma. So figuring out where to find those, how to access those, and how to implement those and bring those into your new design so that you can use those to start designing. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what those libraries are made up of, and so that you can have the knowledge to start creating if you did want to create any types of your own libraries, but still knowing that we can use those pre-created libraries. So I think these are going to be really helpful in just kind of understanding what your designers are talking about. So you can feel like you're not totally lost when you hear them say components or styles and variables and all of that stuff. So Excellent. Yeah. So we're going to talk about components. What are they? How to create them. Quickly talk on component variations and variants, and then go into styles and variables. Not too much into variables, but just enough so because that is a newer one into Figma. And even for a designer who's been deep into Figma, can be very complicated. So we'll touch on the basics of just what is a variable, which is really hard to even say basics because it is such a complicated topic, but understanding where to find those styles and variables and understanding why your designer might be using those and talking about those. Then breaking down shapes and images. How do we bring in shapes? How do we bring in images? How do we use those? And then we'll pause because that's a lot.
At that point, we will have a lot of the building blocks that we'll need in order to start creating those designs and files. So we'll take a pause, we'll answer open questions that we have, get some pro tips from Lauren on taking those to the next level, and then we'll be ready for some of what I like to think of as more of the advanced things. That how do we take all of those components that we've had and do things that can bring those files to the next level, apply some more of those design principles. So what are some of those kind of more quote unquote advanced concepts that we'll be learning in the second half, Lauren?
Yeah, so we'll start out with auto layout. Auto layout is definitely one of my favorites, but also very complicated. And a lot of these things, too, that we're going to be talking about, you can go a full hour, full multi hour, full week, a full month on a lot of these. So a lot of my goal is to, again, give you the basics and then give you, if you do end up wanting to dig deeper, you can definitely do a lot with what we're going to learn with the basics, but give you that knowledge of, okay, this is what I can start to look for, start to search for to help me learn more. So with auto layout, we're going to talk about the basics of why would you use it, why have designers set up things with auto layout, and where could it be really helpful with some small things that you might be creating. Then we're going to go into plugins and community files, things within the Figma community. That can be a really great place, especially for somebody who's not a designer, who's looking for some pre-made things, whether it be wireframes, whether it be icons or something like that. You can find a lot of those in the Figma community. So we'll talk about where you can find those community files, what are plugins and why would you use those? Those are going to be really helpful for things that might not be natively possible in Figma. A plugin might be able to solve what you're trying to do. And then going into prototyping. So figuring out how to do some basic prototypings to help bring your designs to life, because that I think is really key, especially when you are talking to your developers or stakeholders that you're trying to visualize something of how it's actually going to be moving. Being able to show how it should go instead of just trying to explain it can be really helpful to understand how to do. So we're going to dive into that.
Fantastic. I cannot wait for all of those. And as Lauren mentioned, there is no expectation we will be anywhere close to expert level on any of these topics. So we will at least have an understanding, be able to not get frustrated endlessly with auto layouts. We can figure out why they're working the way they are and just understand how to bring some of these elements in to create those basic designs that we're having our learning objective there. And by the end of that, we're hoping that we'll be ready to share and get feedback from other folks. So often we're the ones getting brought in at the end to give that feedback. We'll be able to then hopefully at that point share with other folks and get feedback on the things that we've created in Figma. And we will of course leave time, some padding at the end there for the open questions, more of those pro tips. And then we want to bring you all into this conversation as well. So we're hoping that you'll ask questions throughout the process and we can bring any of those questions that come up towards the end of the series. So that is a lot. I'm excited. I'm so a little nervous, if I'm going to be honest, Lauren.
You're going to do great.
Wait to have a better understanding on all of this and be able to jam more effectively with the design advocates on our team, the designers on our team, and just everyone in our product team to be able to deliver more value for customers. So excited for this, Lauren. Thank you so much for putting together such a thorough and comprehensive plan for us.
You bet. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And you're going to feel, I think I'm hoping too, a lot of this stuff that you're going to feel like, oh, it's not as complicated as I might have thought. Like there is a little bit of an easier way to dive into stuff and feel very confident going out of this.
I love that. If we can make it seem simpler than it seems now, I think that's a good goal to walk away with.
Yes.
And that is what we will cover. We have this as a public community file. So if you want to create your own copy of this learning journey and follow along with us, we will be updating that as we go with the videos from each day's session. So you can access those right there and try out creating your own components if you find yourself in a similar situation to me, a product builder who wants to learn Figma from the very beginning. So with that, I think we're ready to dig in, Lauren.
I think we're ready to go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Thanks so much. See y'all soon.
Awesome. Bye.